Hi and welcome everyone to our 17th episode of The Little Inside. As you might have guessed, my name is still Tobi, and this week we're going to have a look at the voices in our heads. Let's get started right after the intro. Have you ever noticed that there is this kind of background commentary in your mind going on? Now, whether you're looking at someone else and commenting on their appearance or their behavior, whether you're watching a nice view, a nice sunset, and then your mind is constantly talking about other stuff. It's about talking about what to do next. It's talking about who to associate with, all while you're watching this beautiful sunset. And there's only very few moments or very few short times when the mind doesn't seem to talk. And that becomes really most obvious for people who are just starting with meditation practice or who are just joining a meditation retreat and they make their kind of first experiences on their path. They suddenly notice, oh my God, my mind is constantly talking. No matter what I do or where I am, the mind is constantly fabricating stuff. And most of it is kind of words or images. In other words, just thinking. So with such a commentary or a narrative going on in the background, it is really difficult to actually feel peaceful and relaxed. This is also where a lot of energy just really leaks out of our system, where we lose a lot of energy, you can say. And we lose that energy because the mind is continuously active. And it is habituated to this inner activity of constantly labeling, judging, comparing, managing, and so forth. So this voice in your head is actually a conditioned narrative. It is not really something that you do or that you make, that's what that means, but it is conditioned. It's conditioned by the way you've been brought up, by your society, by your current circumstances. Like let's say you are sitting at the beach and you see a dog walk by, then that dog might trigger the thought, oh, that's a nice, cute little dog. So you have that kind of thought arising in your mind due to the presence of a dog right in front of your eyes. Or also it might be your education, it might be the way you use social media or the internet in general. All that forms and shapes the narrative that is going on in the back of your mind all the time. Very often this narrative also coexists with emotional states. It creates emotional states and it comments on these emotional states. So it's kind of a back and forth very often. We feel something, might feel some sadness arising, and then immediately the commentary starts and he says, oh my God, might I be depressed? I might have to visit a psychiatrist to find out. And then suddenly fear arises. And then you comment on that fear, oh, and I'm also feeling quite fearful. Why am I so scared? And how can I turn it off? How can I shut my mind up? So this kind of commentary and your emotional states, they constantly are living in a sort of exchange. They're conditioning one another. Now this kind of state of being in this constant state of verbalization where your mind is constantly talking in the background or even in the foreground, this leads to a loss of energy. You lose a lot of energy. You lose a lot of inner strength, inner composure and calmness. And basically this is one of the number one reasons why most people are feeling so exhausted and drained on the inside. It's because the mind is constantly active, doing what it does, labeling, talking, judging, comparing, and so forth. So the good news is that it is possible to actually become aware of that commentary in your head, that voice in your head. It's a little bit like if you had a shirt and you have it hanging in a wardrobe in front of you. Then you can look at the shirt and see, there is a shirt, or you can actually wear it. Now usually when we wear the shirt, we forget that there is a shirt. We're walking through life unaware that we are wearing a shirt most of the time. Unless you might spill some coffee onto your shirt, then you become aware of your shirt again. But most of the time, if nothing's wrong with the shirt, we don't notice it. So for many people, they become aware of thoughts for the first time when their thoughts become such a huge burden to them, when they become so annoying, so overwhelming, that they have no other choice but to actually wake up to them, to notice, there's so many thoughts going on all the time, and it feels so overwhelming, and I have absolutely no idea what to do with those thoughts. I actually don't know what to do with my mind at all. Now that is, for many people, one of the first moments of actually waking up, of actually encountering a spiritual path and having interest in training the mind, seeing that it is possible to train the mind, seeing that it is possible to let go of the voice in your head. Becoming aware of the voice in our heads is possible. So that's the first good news. The second good news is that everybody can do that. Everybody can wake up to the voice in their head and notice it as just what it is, really a conditioned voice in our heads. And why is it good news? It's good news because it helps us to detach, to disidentify with this voice in our head, and that immediately leads to a more peaceful, more happy, more light-hearted way of being. And that's the whole point, right? That's why we practice meditation, because it helps us to feel release, and it helps us to relax, to be at peace, and to share that with everyone who is living around us. So if it is that we are lost constantly in this voice in our head, that we feel that this is who I am, not even being aware that, I am the voice in my head, but actually being completely oblivious to the fact that there is such a thing as a voice in our heads, is leading to all sorts of conflicts and problems and fights and all sorts of disharmony that exists in this world. It is easily becomes clear when you see that why are we fighting so much? Why is there so much problems in our relationship with other human beings? It's because of too much talking in our mind and too much talking from our mouth. It's the talking that exits our mouth through our minds. And if our mind is actually quite quiet and peaceful and relaxed, there's not so many problems. Sure, there are the problems of getting older or having an accident or losing things and so forth, but it is way less stressful when the commentary is not there anymore. So that's why it's really good news. It's great news. You can step back from the voice in your head. So when you are stepping back, then you will notice that there are good thoughts, there are bad thoughts, and I say good thoughts or bad thoughts in terms of their results. Having good thoughts gives you predominantly good emotions, beneficial emotions that are useful for yourself and others. Having bad thoughts or unskillful thoughts, you can say, is leading to unhappiness for yourself and others around you. So becoming aware of the voice in your head also gives you a great choice, really. It gives you the choice of how to express yourself in your life. You might notice, for example, there is an unskillful thought that is arising in my mind. Do I really choose to express that, yes or no? What would be the result of expressing such a thought? What would be the result of criticizing the other person? Or what is motivating me to say what I want to say? If we can step back from the voice in our head, then we have that option. For a person that doesn't have that option, they usually just react to whatever goes on. It's this kind of reactive personality that when they get triggered, when their buttons are pushed, they just get angry. And then they just respond with anger. And so the problem doesn't cease there, it continues. And so if you have that ability to step back, you have the ability to live a more peaceful and fulfilling life. So that's another great benefit of being able to step back and to become aware of your mind or aware of the voice in your head. And you can even take it a little bit further. When you are looking at the voice in your head, rather than giving it a good direction and abandoning unskillful kind of thoughts, you can actually notice that thinking is just thinking. The voice in your head is just a voice. It's not a problem, it's not threatening you, it can't do any harm to you. As long as you're aware and mindful of it, it can do nothing. You can tell your voice, well, throw your best punch. Attack me, do whatever you want to do, and then you can listen to it or watch it like you would watch a movie, or you can listen to it like you would hear another person that is talking with you and is telling you some sort of story. And that gives you great power, actually, to have that choice to step back and notice that the voice in your head is just a voice in your head is very liberating. It helps the mind to let go of pain right on the spot. And if we even want to take it deeper, we can notice that none of the content that is manifesting as voices in your heads, none of that content is actually who you are. It's just voices. And those voices are like a broken record. It just keeps going round and round. Mostly it's the same kind of topics that are going on in people's heads, people's minds. And if you're actually looking at thoughts, if you're observing thoughts, you'll notice it's just always the same kind of thing going on. And when you see into thoughts, then you will also slowly come to understand that all of these thoughts are conditioned by society, by your upbringing, by media, and so forth. I've mentioned it before. Therefore, you are not the creator of these thoughts. You are not making them. You can observe right now in this moment and see what thought comes up next. Are you making it? Are you sustaining it? And are you making it go away? Or is it arising automatically? And then when its causes come to an end, it just ceases automatically. Or transfers into other thoughts, other emotions, and so forth. And that process, if you observe it, and you clearly understand that process, or this kind of thinking process, this voice in my head, is not who I am. It is just that. It's a voice in my head. It can be incredibly liberating. Knowing that you are not the voice in your head is freeing you from all the worries, is freeing you from all the obsessions of the mind, all the issues that the mind has. And you notice how I speak, I'm not saying the issues that you have, the issues that, or the problems that you have, but the problems that the mind has. There's a difference. You as awareness, looking at the mind, performing according to cause and result, right in front of you, doing what it always does, telling its stories, round and round and round again, while you're on the way to work, while you're coming back home from work, when you can't sleep at night, the mind goes on and on and on. If you can look through it and see clearly, oh, I'm not making that story. I'm not the one that owns that story. Then you lose your interest in that story. Furthermore, you see that the story can do you no harm. Because you're here as awareness. You're above the story. You're above the voice in your head. And the voice in your head cannot reach you. It cannot attack you. It cannot do anything to you. Like you cannot do anything to space. You cannot kick space. You cannot punch it. You cannot offend it. You can scream and shout as much as you want. Space doesn't care. So if you are resting as that conscious presence or that awareness and noticing that the voice just does what voices do, it talks, no big deal, the voice in your head will fade because it is energized by your resistance. And if you drop your resistance, the voice will fade. It becomes unimportant. It is not an issue anymore. It is just a voice. And if you can see it like that, you take away all its oxygen. It cannot breathe anymore. It will slowly, slowly fade. So this is it for the 17th episode, covering the voices in our heads. I hope it was inspiring for you in some ways. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, let me know, write me an email or write it down in the comment section below. And I hope to see you maybe one day at one of our retreats here in Phuket. And wish you a wonderful next week. Enjoy yourselves and watch the voices in your head and see what happens to them. Bye-bye.